Top 10 Self-Seeding Perennial Flowers. No replanting needed. Hey there, garden dreamers and plant lovers. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, the place where your living space becomes your growing space. Whether you've got a sunlit windowsill, a backyard plot, or just a few pots on the balcony, this channel is for you. Because we know you're not just looking for plants, you're looking for peace, purpose, and a little bit of magic in your everyday life. You're someone who finds joy in watching new leaves unfurl, who loves the scent of soil after watering, who believes that growing something, no matter how small, is an act of hope. But life can be hectic, and sometimes the garden gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list. That's why today's episode is going to feel like a gift. We're diving into the world of self-seeding perennial flowers, plants so smart they return all by themselves year after year. No digging, no replanting, just nature doing the work, while you enjoy the show. So if you're ready to spend less time stressing and more time blooming, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our Earthly Delights family, because your garden journey is just getting started. 1. Columbine, the wanderer with wings. Let's begin with a flower that feels like it wandered out of a fairy tale, Columbine. Also known as the garden's gentle wanderer with wings. If you've ever dreamed of a flower that flutters into your garden like it belongs to another realm, Columbine is just that, with its delicate spurred petals and soft nodding blooms. It looks like a butterfly frozen mid-flight, and somehow, every year, it finds a new corner of your garden to surprise you. Columbine is a gift to those of us who crave a little whimsy, but don't always have the time to fuss over every bloom. Once it's planted, it doesn't ask for much. Just a little sunlight, full or partial, and well-drained soil. And in return, it gives you a new show every spring. Reseeding itself without fanfare. What makes it truly enchanting is how it behaves like a traveler, never quite staying in the same place. You might plant it by the back fence, but next season, it's popped up near your stepping stones or beside your herbs. It's not random, it's poetic. It's as if the garden is speaking back to you, moving things around when you're not looking. And for those of you in zones 3 through 9, Columbine is right at home. It's incredibly adaptable, tough enough for the changing seasons, yet soft enough to invite hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies into your space. If you're someone who appreciates a natural, slightly wild look, the kind of garden that feels more like a memory than a plan, Columbine will fit right in. Let a few of the spent flowers go to seed, and you'll start to see the magic unfold. Year after year, this flower doesn't just grow, it remembers, and with it, your garden starts to feel alive, not just planted, but participating. Ready to meet the next flower that practically grows itself? Let's keep going. 2. Cosmos, the artist that paints itself. Next up, let's drift into something a little lighter, a little airier, the effortlessly charming cosmos. I like to call it the artist that paints itself, because that's exactly what it does. It fills your garden canvas with soft brushstrokes of pink, white, and magenta, and then returns. Year after year, without asking for anything in return. Cosmos is one of those rare plants that feels like it was made for people who love the idea of gardening more than the actual work. And if that sounds like you, someone who forgets to water sometimes, or gets too busy to check on the soil, you're in good company. Cosmos doesn't hold it against you. In fact, it thrives in conditions that many flowers would complain about. It actually prefers average to poor soil, which makes it the perfect companion for those forgotten corners of your yard, or even for a few containers on a sun-drenched balcony. As long as it gets full sun, it will bloom like it has something to prove. And the best part? Once it's bloomed and the petals start to fall, it quietly drops seeds like little promises for next season. You might not even notice. But come spring, the garden remembers. The cosmos returns, uninvited, but deeply welcome. It's a great flower for those who like a touch of softness, a bit of wildness, and a whole lot of grace. If you're building a cutting garden, cosmos is a must-have. Its airy stems and dainty blooms are beautiful in vases, but just as enchanting when left to sway gently in the breeze. So, if you've ever wanted your garden to feel like a watercolor painting, light, free, and alive, start with Cosmos. It's not just low maintenance, it's self-expressive. Let's move on to a flower that brings not just color, but structure and a 3. Lupine, the Skyward Sculptor. And now, let's raise our eyes, and our energy, to a flower that doesn't just bloom, it builds. Towering above the rest with elegance and power. Lupine is what I call the Skyward Sculptor. It adds vertical drama to your garden, almost like nature reaching up to shake hands with the sky. There's something regal about lupine. Its tall spires of pea-like flowers come in rich purples, vibrant pinks, icy blues, and even soft creams. But what makes it truly special isn't just how it looks. It's what it does when you're not watching. Once planted, lupine doesn't just grow for a season and disappear. Oh no, it blooms, sets seed, and then, quietly and consistently, starts planning its return. You'll begin to notice new clusters sprouting up near the originals, sometimes even in unexpected color combinations. It's like your garden is painting new versions of a familiar masterpiece. And if you live in zones 4 to 8, lupine will feel right at home, especially in cooler climates. It loves full sun but can handle a bit of shade. Just make sure the soil is slightly acidic and well drained. And here's a pro tip from one gardener to another. Avoid disturbing its deep taproot. Lupine is loyal, but only if you let it settle in peace. But here's where it gets even better. Lupine is a nitrogen fixer. That means it actually enriches the soil around it, feeding not just itself, but the plants nearby too. So while it's standing tall and proud, it's quietly nurturing everything below the surface. In a way, lupine is like that strong friend who shows up, stands firm, and lifts everyone else just by being there. So if you've been dreaming of a garden with dimension, one that doesn't just spread out but reaches up, lupine will give your space the architectural poetry it's been missing. Coming up next, a bloom that bursts with color and returns like clockwork, the ever-vibrant zinnia. Let's keep blooming forward. 4. Zinnia, the bold comeback kid. Now, let's turn up the volume on color, because here comes a flower that doesn't whisper its presence. It shouts it with joy. Meet Zinnia, the bold comeback kid of the garden world. If you're someone who believes your plants should lift your mood the moment you step outside, zinnias will become your best friend. These flowers bloom in every shade imaginable: hot pinks, blazing oranges, sunny yellows, and even lime greens, like a box of crayons spilled across your garden bed. But zinnias aren't just about good looks. They're about reliability. Plant them once, let them go to seed, and next season they'll be back, often with even more enthusiasm. It's as if they remember the sunlight they basked in, and return just to relive it again. And here's the beauty of zinnias for today's gardener. They're fast growers. They love full sun and they absolutely thrive in the heat. So if you're gardening in zones 3 to 10, especially in a sunny spot, this is a flower that won't let you down, even in scorching summers or dry spells. Zinnias also make amazing cut flowers. So if you've ever dreamed of bringing your garden indoors, vases brimming with color on your kitchen counter or nightstand, these blooms will keep the supply going. And yes, pollinators adore them. Butterflies practically fight over them. So while your garden fills with color, it also buzzes with life. But here's my favorite part. Zinnias don't care if your soil is perfect. They don't demand attention or precision. They just want sun, space, and a chance to shine. So if you're the kind of gardener who wants immediate impact without the endless fuss, start with zinnias. Let the petals fall, let the seeds settle, and watch your garden bounce back brighter than ever. Next up, we're stepping into a flower that's not only beautiful, it's healing, ancient, and surprisingly powerful. Let's explore the gentle wisdom of Calendula. 5. Calendula, the healer in bloom. And now, let's slow things down a little and sink into something softer, deeper, a flower that's been quietly helping humans for centuries. This is Calendula, often called pot marigold, but here at Earthly Delights, we like to call it the healer in bloom. At first glance, Calendula is simply lovely. Its golden orange petals catch the sunlight like warm honey, and its gentle presence feels right at home in any garden, tucked among herbs, lining your veggie beds, or softening the edges of a stone path. But behind its beauty is something more, something that speaks to those of us who believe gardens aren't just for decoration, but for restoration. Calendula is a traditional medicinal flower, and for good reason. Its petals can be dried and steeped for calming teas. used in homemade balms, or blended into healing salves for the skin. It's the kind of flower that says, "I've got you," even when everything else feels overwhelming. But the best part? Calendula practically grows itself, though it's technically an annual in most zones. It reseeds so reliably that many gardeners, myself included, treat it like a perennial. Once you let those spent blooms go to seed, they'll fall to the soil and begin writing the next chapter of your garden's story. And don't be fooled by its gentle appearance. This flower is a worker. It attracts ladybugs and pollinators, repels pests from nearby vegetables, and keeps the garden ecosystem in beautiful balance. It thrives in zones 2 to 11, enjoys full sun and asks for very little. No rich soil, no complicated care, just a place to grow and do its quiet magic. Calendula is perfect for anyone who wants more than color in the garden, for those who want purpose, connection, and maybe even a little self-care. Now, let's lift things up again, quite literally, with a plant that adds elegance in the air and movement in the breeze. Ready to meet Verbena, the airy dancer? Let's continue. 6. Verbena bonariensis, the air dancer. Now let's take a breath and watch something float. Light, graceful, and effortlessly elegant, Verbena bonariensis moves through the garden like a whisper. I like to think of it as the air dancer, a flower that doesn't just grow, but glides. If your garden feels a little heavy, too many solid shapes, too many dense leaves, Verbena is the plant that brings in the space between. Its tall, slender stems rise up like thin wands, holding clusters of lavender-purple blooms that almost hover mid-air. And when the breeze comes, they don't resist it, they dance with it. But here's the thing. This dreamy plant is also a powerhouse. Once you plant Verbena, especially in a sunny spot with well-drained soil, it begins to reseed itself generously. You might start with one clump this season, but next year, you'll find it gently weaving its way between other plants, popping up exactly where the garden needed a touch of softness. It's ideal for those of you who love that naturalistic, meadow-style look, like something out of a painting, where the flowers don't sit still, but shimmer. If you garden in zones 7 to 11, Verbena will return reliably, and even if you're in a cooler zone, don't worry, treat it like an annual and let itself sow. You might be surprised by how willingly it comes back. And of course, pollinators love it. Bees, butterflies, even hummingbirds, they can't resist. So while Verbena seems airy and delicate, it's quietly building an entire ecosystem right around your feet. This is the flower for the dreamers. For those of you who want movement, mystery, and just a touch of wild magic in your space. So let's climb a little higher now, from floating blossoms to vines that reach for the sky. Up next is a flower that opens with the morning light, the joyful, climbing wonder called Morning Glory. 7. Morning Glory, the living alarm clock. And now, we rise with the sun, quite literally, with a flower that greets the morning before you even step outside. This is Morning Glory, and around here, we call it the living alarm clock. Why? Because each bloom is like nature's way of saying, "Good morning, it's time to begin again." There's something so uplifting about this vine. It doesn't just grow, it climbs, twirls, and stretches upward like it's chasing joy. Its trumpet-shaped blooms open wide with the first light, painting your trellis, fence, or balcony rail in purples, blues, pinks, and whites. And then, by afternoon, it gently folds back in, as if it knows when to rest. Morning Glory is perfect for those of us who want to transform vertical spaces without waiting years for growth. It's fast, it's colorful, and it doesn't ask for much. Full sun, well-drained soil, and a structure to hold onto, and it will do the rest. And here's what makes it truly magical for busy gardeners. Once planted, it remembers. The seed pods that form after blooming will dry, drop, and settle. Next season, without any help from you, those seeds begin again. You'll walk outside one morning and find the vines already curling toward the sky. It thrives in zones 3 through 10, making it wonderfully versatile. Whether you have a big backyard or a tiny city balcony, Morning Glory will find a way to make it beautiful. Just one thing to note. Some varieties reseed very enthusiastically, so give them space, guide them gently, and maybe check in once in a while to make sure they're not taking over too much. If you're looking for a flower that lifts your spirit every single day and turns ordinary structures into living art, Morning Glory is your answer. Next, we'll meet a tall and timeless garden beauty, a bloom that stands with quiet strength and old-world grace. Let's step into the elegance of Foxglove. 8. Foxglove, the garden's storyteller. Now let's enter a quieter, more mysterious part of the garden, the part where shadows stretch a little longer. And every bloom feels like it holds a secret. Welcome to the world of Foxglove, a flower I like to call the garden's storyteller. Foxglove doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't need to. With its tall spires and bell-shaped blooms in soft pinks, creamy whites, lavender, and deep purples, it carries the elegance of an old soul. You don't plant foxglove for instant flash, you grow it for atmosphere. For that timeless, almost enchanted feeling it brings to your garden beds and borders. But behind its delicate beauty is a clever habit. You see, foxglove is technically a biennial or a short-lived perennial, which means it might not bloom its first year. But once it does, it goes to seed, and that's where the magic begins. If you leave the stalks alone, if you let nature scatter those seeds just as it intended, you'll soon notice new life rising the following year. Often right where the old one stood. It's like the story continues, one bloom whispering to the next. Season after season, foxglove thrives best in zones 4 to 9, and it prefers part shade or cool sun, especially if you're in a warmer region. Rich, well-drained soil keeps it happy, and minimal intervention keeps it graceful. The tall stems draw in bees and hummingbirds, who seem to know just how special this flower really is. But here's something important: foxglove is not edible. In fact, it's toxic if ingested, so it's best planted in spots away from curious pets or little hands. Still, with care and awareness, it remains one of the most breathtaking additions to a cottage-style garden. Foxglove is for those who love a touch of the dramatic, the ones who want their garden to feel like a storybook, layered, lived in, and just a little bit wild. Ready to meet a flower that blooms like sunshine itself and works quietly behind the scenes? Let's explore the cheerful endurance of Coreopsis. 9. Coreopsis, the golden giver. Now let's brighten things up with a flower that doesn't just bloom, it glows. Say hello to Coreopsis, the golden giver of the garden. If there were a flower that captured the essence of sunshine, this would be it. And the best part? It keeps giving, season after season, asking for next to nothing in return. Coreopsis is the kind of plant that always shows up, through the heat, through the drought, even when you've forgotten to check in. It's cheerful, daisy-like flowers in yellows, pinks, and deep reds bring warmth to any space. And if you've ever looked out at a garden bed that feels dull or tired, Coreopsis is the spark you didn't know you needed. For modern gardeners, especially those juggling work, kids, or just a busy life, Coreopsis is a breath of relief. It's low maintenance, quick to settle in, and once established, it reseeds itself like a quiet gardener working overnight. Let the seed heads drop where they may, and next year, you'll see new shoots rising like golden reminders of seasons past. It thrives in zones 4 to 9. And absolutely loves full sun. And when I say it handles heat and poor soil well, I mean it. This is the flower you plant in the tricky spots, along walkways, in dry patches, or places where other blooms struggle. And still, it shines. But it's not just about beauty. Coreopsis is beloved by bees and butterflies, which means every bloom you grow helps build a healthier, more balanced ecosystem. It's a small act with a big impact, and isn't that what we're all trying to do? In some way, if you've been searching for a flower that's as dependable as it is delightful, Coreopsis is it. It doesn't just grow, it supports, it sustains, it shines. And now, let's meet the final flower on our journey, a bloom that feels like an old friend. One that keeps coming back no matter how much time has passed. Let's step into the loyal light of Black-Eyed Susan. 10. Black-Eyed Susan, the loyal companion. And here we are, the final bloom in our journey of self-seeding wonders. But don't let its placement fool you. This last flower may just be the one your garden remembers most. Say hello to Black-Eyed Susan, the loyal companion. There's something undeniably comforting about Black-Eyed Susans. With their sunny yellow petals and dark centers, they bring a sense of warmth and stability, like that one friend who always shows up. Even when you haven't called in a while. They don't demand attention, but somehow they always catch your eye. Perfect for gardeners in zones 3 to 9. These perennials are as tough as they are cheerful. They thrive in full sun, handle drought like pros, and adapt beautifully to a variety of soil conditions. But what makes them truly special is their ability to reseed with grace. Once established, they begin to reappear year after year, often spreading gently across your garden beds like they're settling in for the long haul. If you've got an open patch of soil, maybe near a fence, along a driveway, or mixed in with other wildflowers, black-eyed Susans will find their place. And while they brighten up the space with color, they're also doing quiet work behind the scenes, supporting pollinators, inviting butterflies, and helping stitch your garden together in a golden thread. They're not flashy, they're not delicate, they're steadfast, and in a world that moves fast and asks for so much, having a flower that simply stays is a gift. So whether you're starting your very first garden or tending a plot you've loved for years, black-eyed Susans are the companions that grow with you through seasons of change, growth, and return. And now that we've met all 10 of these self-sowing stars, it's time to bring everything together. Let's take one last breath together and reflect on what these flowers really teach us in our closing chapter. The garden that remembers you. And there you have it, 10 flowers. 10 quiet miracles that know how to come back home, even when you've forgotten they were ever there. That's the magic of self-seeding perennials. They don't just grow once, they return. They remember the soil, the sun, the seasons. They remember you. In a world where everything feels temporary, where trends shift, inboxes fill, and time slips through our fingers, these flowers offer something rare: continuity. A promise that beauty doesn't always have to be hard-won. That sometimes, nature takes the lead, and we just need to let her. Each flower we explored today carries its own energy. Columbine brings whimsy, Cosmos brings lightness, Lupine gives strength, Calendula heals, Zinnia sings, Foxglove whispers, Verbena dances, Morning Glory climbs, Coreopsis shines, and black-eyed Susan, she stays. So whether you're growing in raised beds or terracotta pots, along a wooden fence or inside a city balcony, know this: your garden doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be alive. And with these self-sowing companions, it will be. Let this be your reminder that you're not starting from scratch every spring. You're continuing a story, one petal, one seed, one returning bloom at a time. If you found a little inspiration today, a bit of hope tucked into those leaves and stems, I'd love for you to stick around. Hit that subscribe button and become part of our growing family here at Earthly Delights. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a garden. And in this space, we grow together. Until next time, keep your hands in the dirt, your eyes on the blossoms, and your heart wide open. Your garden is listening, and it's already planning its return.